Look at it. Just look at it. It's sitting in your kitchen right now. A simple, white, crystalline powder that you buy for a few cents and sprinkle on your fries without a second thought. But if you were to carry that same salt shaker back just 500 years, you wouldn't be holding a condiment. You would be holding the most powerful currency on the planet. Welcome to Untold Past. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on a history so violent and so wealthy it will change the way you look at your dinner table forever. We are talking about salt. But not the salt you know. We are talking about white gold. In this deep dive documentary, we explore how this tiny mineral built the Great Wall of China, how it paid the salaries of the Roman legions, and how it made a single African king so rich that he crashed the global economy. From the bloody salt mines of the Sahara to the revolutionary streets of Paris, salt has been the silent engine of human civilization. Before we begin this journey into the ancient world, make sure to subscribe to Untold Past and hit that notification bell. We spent weeks researching this story to bring you the highest quality historical analysis on YouTube. Help us grow by hitting that like button right now. Are you ready? Let's go back to when a handful of salt was worth a life. The Roman war machine and the salarium. 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire didn't just conquer the world with iron and blood, they conquered it with salt. You see, in the ancient world, salt wasn't a luxury, it was a strategic necessity. Before the invention of electricity and refrigeration, there was only one way to keep an army fed on a long campaign: preservation. Without salt to cure meat and fish, the Roman legions would have starved to death within weeks of leaving the city gates. Because of this, the Roman government didn't just tax salt, they turned it into a weapon of state. They built the Via Salaria, or the Salt Road, a massive highway designed specifically to bring salt from the coastal pans into the heart of Rome. But here is the most incredible part. Salt was so valuable that it literally became money. The Roman state often paid its soldiers not in gold coins, but in rations of salt. This payment was called salarium. Take a moment to think about that. Every single month when you receive your salary, you are using a word born from the sweat of a Roman soldier clutching a bag of salt 2,000 years ago. If a soldier was lazy, if he failed to hold the line, his commander would say he was not worth his salt. To the Romans, salt was the difference between a soldier who could fight and a man who would rot. But while Rome used salt to build an army, an empire in Africa was using it to build a mountain of gold. The Golden Exchange, the legend of Mansa Musa. Imagine a desert so vast and so hot that even the wind feels like fire. This is the Sahara in the 14th century, and in the middle of this wasteland, a miracle was happening. In the north, there were mines where slaves carved giant slabs of salt out of the earth like they were cutting marble. In the south, deep in the jungles, there were rivers flowing with gold. But there was a problem. The people with the gold were starving for salt. In the humid heat of West Africa, if you don't replace the salt your body loses through sweat, your muscles cramp, your heart falters, and you die. This created the most lopsided trade in human history. In the markets of Timbuktu, salt was traded for gold, ounce for ounce. Imagine that. You put a block of salt on one side of a scale, and you pile pure gold dust on the other until they balance. This trade turned the Mali Empire into the wealthiest kingdom on earth. Its ruler, Mansa Musa, became so rich that he is still considered the wealthiest person to ever live. Historians say that when Mansa Musa traveled to Mecca, his caravan was so long that by the time the front reached the next city, the end hadn't even left the palace. He carried so much gold that he bought with simple salt, that when he passed through Cairo, he gave away so much wealth that the price of gold plummeted across the entire Mediterranean. He caused a 12-year economic depression just by spending his pocket change. This was the power of white gold. It could turn a desert king into a global god. The Emperor's Secret: Salt and the Great Wall. While kings in Africa were trading salt for gold, the emperors of China were using it for something much more sinister: total social control. As early as the 7th century BC, Chinese thinkers realized that you can't tax a man's air, but you can tax his salt. Because everyone needs it to survive, a salt tax is a tax that no one can escape. The Chinese government created the world's first state monopoly. They took over every salt mine and every evaporation pond. They made it a crime punishable by death to sell salt without an imperial license. Have you ever wondered how the Great Wall of China was funded? It wasn't built for free. It cost a fortune in stone, timber, and the lives of millions of workers. The majority of that funding came from the salt tax. The Great Wall is quite literally a monument built of salt. To protect this wealth, the emperors created a specialized salt police. These weren't regular soldiers. They were a brutal internal security force. They hunted salt smugglers with a religious fervor. If you were a peasant trying to scrape a little salt from a dry lake to feed your family, you were seen as a traitor to the throne. In China, salt wasn't just seasoning, it was the very glue that held the imperial dynasty together. History books tell you that the French Revolution was about liberty, equality, and fraternity. But if you were a peasant in 1789, it was about something much more practical. It was about the gabelle. The gabelle was the most hated salt tax in history. Under French law, the king didn't just tax salt, he forced you to buy it. Every citizen over the age of 8 was legally required to purchase a weekly ration of salt from the government at a price 7 times its actual value. Imagine being so poor you can't afford bread, yet the law forces you to buy expensive salt you don't even need. And if you tried to bring cheaper salt from another province, you were treated like a high-level drug smuggler. The salt police in France were shadows in the night. They had the power to enter any home, search any bed, and arrest anyone suspected of salt fraud. Every year, thousands of men and women were sent to the galleys, rowing until they died or hanged simply for trying to avoid a salt tax. When the angry mobs finally stormed the Bastille, the air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and salt. One of the first acts of the new revolutionary government wasn't to write a constitution, it was to abolish the gabelle. King Louis XVI lost his head because he tried to turn a biological necessity into a royal luxury. The American Civil War, the Salt Siege. We move now to the 1860s, to a nation divided, the American Civil War. While we talk about rifles and cannons, the real war was fought in the pantry. The Southern Confederacy had a massive problem. They were a meat-based economy, but they had almost no salt mines of their own. As the war dragged on, the North realized that they didn't need to outshoot the South, they just needed to starve them. President Abraham Lincoln ordered a total naval blockade of southern ports. The primary target? Salt. Without salt, the South couldn't preserve food for their soldiers. Their horses began to die from mineral deficiency. Their wounds wouldn't heal. The desperation was so high that people began digging up the dirt floors of old smokehouses, boiling the soil just to extract the salt that had dripped from cured hams years prior. One of the most brutal battles of the war was at Saltville, Virginia, specifically over a salt works. The Union Army knew that if they took the salt, the Confederacy would crumble, and they were right. When the salt ran out, the rebellion died, not from a bullet, but from a biological collapse. The Salt March, defying an empire with a handful of sand. By the 20th century, the British Empire was the largest the world had ever seen. They controlled the oceans, the spice trade, and they controlled the salt of India. In India, salt was everywhere. It washed up on the shores every single day. But the British made it a crime for any Indian to collect it. You were forced to buy British taxed salt, imported from thousands of miles away. It was a symbol of total colonial humiliation. Then, in March 1930, an elderly man with a walking stick began a journey that would end an empire. Mahatma Gandhi began the Salt March. He walked for 24 days. He covered 240 miles. By the time he reached the village of Dandi on the coast, he was followed by thousands. He walked down to the edge of the Arabian Sea, reached into the mud, and picked up a tiny, crusty lump of salt. "With this," he said, "I am shaking the foundations of the British Empire." He was right. Gandhi didn't use a bomb. He didn't use a sword. He used a mineral. By showing the world that India didn't need British salt, he showed them that India didn't need the British. The tiny white crystal had won a revolution without firing a single shot. Conclusion: from white gold to common table salt. Today, salt is so cheap we throw it on the ground to melt ice. We worry about it only when our doctors tell us our blood pressure is too high. But we must never forget, for 99% of human history, salt was the most precious thing on earth. It was the white gold that dictated who lived and who died. It built the walls of China, funded the glory of Rome, and fueled the fire of every major revolution. History isn't just about kings and queens. It's about the things we take for granted. It's about the hidden stories behind a simple salt shaker. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the untold past. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to leave a comment below. What other hidden histories should we uncover? Like, subscribe, and stay curious, because the past is never truly buried. It's just waiting to be told.